President Trump promising to double tariffs on foreign steel and announcing.
Yeah, President Trump is once again vowing new tariffs, this time
on Friday, July 25th, 2025. A significant and somewhat surprising escalation in trade relations unfolded as President Donald Trump publicly announced the immediate termination of all ongoing trade discussions with Canada. Welcome viewers to my channel. Please subscribe, like my video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. The core reason for this dramatic decision was Canada's newly implemented and contentious tax on major tech companies, a measure that disproportionately affects numerous U.S.-based corporations. Trump wasted no time in making his discontent known, taking to his personal social media platform, Truth Social, to express his frustration. He characterized Canada as a very difficult country to trade with and forcefully condemned the Canadian tech levy as nothing short of a direct and blatant attack on our country. This highly charged and uncompromising rhetoric immediately signaled a profound and potentially long-lasting shift in the economic and diplomatic landscape between these two closely intertwined North American nations. The implications of such a move were felt almost immediately across various sectors, raising concerns about potential economic disruptions on both sides of the border and even broader global market stability. The controversial digital services tax, a point of friction in its genesis. At the very epicenter of this burgeoning trade dispute lies Canada's recently enacted digital services tax, DST. This specific fiscal measure is designed to target large technology companies that generate more than $15 million in revenue from Canadian internet users. The first round of payments for this new tax was set to begin on Monday, July 28, 2025. It's particularly noteworthy that despite the continuous presence of trade negotiations with the United States, Canada's finance minister had previously stated unequivocally that there would be no deferral in the enforcement of this tax. This steadfast determination from Ottawa to proceed with the levy, regardless of ongoing talks, clearly became a significant irritant for the Trump administration, especially given that the DST was enacted in June 2024 and was retroactive to January 2022. Canada's stated preference has always been a multilateral agreement for digital taxation, stemming from a global effort to address how large tech companies are taxed internationally, as many operate across borders without a significant physical presence. However, delays in reaching a comprehensive international consensus, particularly within the OECD/G20 inclusive framework, pushed Canada to move forward unilaterally to protect the interests of Canadians and address what it perceived as a tax loophole. A prominent lobbying organization, acting on behalf of a substantial number of influential tech giants, has voiced considerable alarm regarding the financial ramifications of this tax. Their analysis suggests that this retroactive levy could burden American corporations with a staggering cost of up to $3 billion. These substantial financial outlays were scheduled to begin as early as June 30th, 2025, adding an immense layer of financial pressure on these U.S. companies. Trump's response was both swift and unyielding. Based on this egregious tax, we are hereby terminating all discussions on trade with Canada, effective immediately. He further escalated the situation by threatening to impose new, significant tariffs on Canada within a mere 7 days, fundamentally altering the economic parameters under which Canadian businesses operate when trading with the United States. This declaration left no room for ambiguity regarding his administration's stance, and indeed, U.S. officials had previously indicated that they would assess a Canadian DST against the same standard as prior investigations into other countries' DSTs that were deemed discriminatory. Canada's swift countermeasures and market fluctuations in detail. While the office of Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney initially remained silent following Trump's public statement, Ottawa's response was not delayed and proved to be equally assertive and retaliatory. Later on that same Friday, Canada promptly imposed a quota on certain steel imports from the U.S. and, more strikingly, introduced a hefty 50% surcharge on any imports that exceeded this newly established quota. Canada's finance minister provided a clear justification for these protective measures, asserting their vital necessity to shield the domestic industry for what they vehemently described as unjust U.S. tariffs. Furthermore, the Canadian government issued a stark warning, indicating its readiness to take additional steps as needed, thereby signaling a strong possibility for further escalation if the situation did not improve. This tit-for-tat dynamic threatened to plunge the two economies into a full-blown trade war, with potentially far-reaching consequences. Trump's provocative social media post, a hallmark of his communication style, immediately sent ripples of uncertainty throughout global financial markets. It effectively brought an abrupt end to a period of relative calm in international trade relations, a phase that had significantly contributed to the stock market's robust recovery and the attainment of all-time highs for key indexes such as the S&P 500 NASDAQ. In the immediate aftermath of Trump's declaration, these crucial market indexes briefly dipped into negative territory, creating a momentary but palpable tremor of investor anxiety and uncertainty. However, demonstrating remarkable underlying resilience, they ultimately rallied later in the afternoon, managing to close the trading day at new record highs. This short-lived but impactful market fluctuation clearly underscored the profound sensitivity of investor confidence to major trade-related announcements, particularly those originating directly from the White House. The episode served as a stark reminder of how quickly sentiment can shift in response to geopolitical and economic developments, highlighting the fragility of market stability when faced with trade disputes between major partners. Evolving trade deadlines and enduring tariff structures, a complex history. Just a few hours prior to Trump's surprisingly hardline stance, there had been a notable glimmer of hope for a de-escalation of trade tensions. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent had offered a distinctly more conciliatory perspective during a public statement, suggesting that President Trump was genuinely open to extending the previously announced July 9th deadline for concluding various trade deals. Bessent even hinted at the possibility of pushing this deadline back significantly, potentially as far as Labor Day. More importantly, he indicated that country-by-country duties themselves could be subject to negotiation, offering a pathway to flexibility. Adding to this impression of potential leniency, Trump himself later acknowledged that the initial July 9th deadline was not rigid, stating explicitly that the U.S. had the option to either extend or shorten it as circumstances dictated. This apparent contradiction between earlier, more flexible statements and Trump's eventual firm declaration concerning Canada highlights the inherently unpredictable and often mercurial nature of his administration's trade policy, which has often relied on aggressive negotiation tactics. It's absolutely crucial to acknowledge that Canada holds the significant position of being the second largest trading partner of the United States. Even before this latest dramatic flare-up, a substantial 25% tariff was already in effect on Canadian imports that failed to adhere to the precise stipulations of the U.S. Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA. This landmark trade deal, initially forged and championed by Trump during his first term, had subsequently faced disruption and uncertainty due to a flurry of new tariff announcements in his second term. It's important to note that this specific 25% tariff on non-compliant Canadian goods does not extend to energy products, which benefit from a comparatively lower 10% rate, reflecting the strategic importance of cross-border energy trade. Beyond these more general tariffs, Canada is also disproportionately affected by Trump's blanket 50% tax on steel and aluminum imports, a particularly impactful measure given its vital role as the single largest foreign supplier of these critical industrial materials to the U.S. This tariff, imposed earlier in 2025, has already caused significant disruption and cost increases in North American metal supply chains, with Canadian producers forced to absorb substantial costs, potentially leading to price inflation for consumers. Furthermore, Canadian manufactured vehicles and auto parts have also not been spared from the broad economic impact, being subject to the 25% duties that Trump has broadly imposed on foreign-made imports, further complicating the highly integrated automotive industry across the continent. This intricate and constantly shifting web of existing tariffs, combined with the most recent dispute over the digital services tax, unequivocally underscores the inherent complexities, sensitivities, and potential volatility that continue to characterize the critically important economic relationship between these two closely intertwined North American nations. The long-term implications for industries heavily reliant on cross-border trade, from agriculture to manufacturing, remain a significant concern for businesses and consumers alike in both countries.